Matty Loves Podcast. Matty Loves Podcast.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Matty Loves Podcast Volume 2. I'm your host, Matt D. Simone, joined as always by the good doctor, Tom Lucas.
Hey, man. How you been?
Been good. Another week has gone by and another episode is due. This episode this week is going to be a little different than previous episodes. I have come up with a story. Now, this is not something that is uncommon. However, I figured that I would take this episode to, somewhat pitch my story to the good doctor here as he serves as a, what you want to say, a producer maybe?
Yeah, I'll be the producer or the publisher.
Okay.
The interested party.
Okay.
With the paycheck.
Right. The important part.
Yes.
This came about, just getting right into it. This came about yesterday. I was jumping around Facebook and I saw an article, as you sometimes see above, or some idiot reposts about something ridiculous like the Doomsday Clock.
The Doomsday Clock.
Which to atomic scientists, me saying that it is meaningless probably pisses them off to no end because they work so hard on coming up with, where we are in the world and where the clock is set, so to speak. But at the end of the day, I have reason to believe that it is just, a big load of shit at the end of the day.
Well, why don't you explain the Doomsday Clock to our listeners who may not be familiar with the concept?
Okay, so the Doomsday Clock, and help me out with this. The Doomsday Clock was created essentially a little after World War II ended. Somewhere around like 1946, 47.
Pretty much right before we step into the Cold War.
Yeah. Right. And so many countries at that period of time had so many dangerous weapons on hand that based on from what I read, based on the amount of like nuclear weaponry that is amassed in the world and or not weaponry, but maybe like terrorist acts, bad things that have culminated, and it all like they have like a chart to where it's like a bar graph, and it like goes up high, and then it goes down low, and then it's starting to go up high again now. Uh-huh. And when you look at the years and you see when the graph is high, you think about what's going on during that period of time, and the graph was never higher during like the Kennedy assassination, Vietnam,
Cuban Missile Crisis. Right. Yeah.
And the whole gimmick with the clock is they set the minute hand as far back as like 15 minutes to midnight, like a quarter to midnight, right. Basically.
Midnight being the apocalypse.
The apocalypse, basically. Yeah. That is midnight,
that's
the end.
Missiles flying, everything
blowing up.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And up until last year, the clock hadn't been set to 3 minutes to midnight since 1984. And yesterday is the day that, or yesterday being, this is the end of January, scientists announced that they would not be setting the clock back or forward and that it would be staying at 3 minutes to midnight. Mm-hmm. So essentially saying that we are on the edge of possible annihilation,
right?
Basically.
Which cheerful thought.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I loved reading something like that. But at the end of the day, I read something like that and I kind of laugh to myself because of how ridiculous, it is for people to flip out over a plastic clock
right.
on the wall, Right.
It's really just a group of people
speculating. That's basically what it is.
It's not an actual measurement.
No,
it's not an actual device that would trigger something.
Right.
It's just speculation.
It doesn't talk to you. It doesn't say doomsday in 3 minutes. Yeah, exactly. It's just it's speculative form of trying to basically figure out what is ahead. And the closest the clock has ever been to midnight was 2 minutes to midnight. And
when was that?
this was in like the mid 50s, right near when Kennedy was assassinated. Okay, so anyway,
Kennedy's assassinated 63.
63, but I mean it was like 57, 58.
Okay, yeah.
It was like close.
Korean War.
Yeah, anytime the clock has been really close, nothing has occurred until like 2 or 3 years after that. So essentially right now, by staying at 3 minutes to midnight, 2019, something really shitty is going to happen. Like the clock was set at like 4 minutes to midnight, like 2 years before 9/11. And that had been the closest it had been in a long time.
Right.
So anyway, so I read all of this. All right, and I'm sitting there kind of scaring myself. Thinking about all of this craziness, and then that's when I messaged you and about it, and I asked you, well, what if the Doomsday Clock really like isn't a clock? But what if the Doomsday Clock exists, but what if it isn't a clock?
Okay.
And that's basically the first question that I asked myself and Tom before this kind of spiraled out of control in my brain.
Right. You had a productive night.
Yes. Yes.
Last night?
This was last night. And this is one of those things, and this happens to me all the time, to where I will come up with an idea probably about 15 minutes before I'm ready to hit the sack. And I will then, for the next 5 minutes, think, all right, do I go to bed or do I at least write something down? Mm-hmm. Unfortunately for me, when I write something down, I'm writing at least 1,500 words. And, it's going to come in like, chunks,
right.
But I had to stop myself last night just because I had stuff to do early this morning and whatever. But I got most of what I wanted to put out there down. So here's what I got.
All right, so you are going to pitch the idea that you came up with in a furious evening, early morning, late night brainstorming session.
Yes.
And this is for a graphic novel.
Yeah, I would say this is probably for a graphic novel, even though, the idea in itself, I'm not, if I were actually pitching this, I would not just only pitch this as a graphic novel, but I would also have ideas where you can utilize this in other forms of media, whether it be transmedia, movies, TV, whatever.
Right on.
I feel like you could do a lot with this. And when I create things nowadays, that's kind of how I think. I don't want to just create a property for one specific form of media.
Right.
I want to make sure that I have something to where this can apply itself to any forms of media.
Right on.
You got to build a machine nowadays. From what I've learned in the past few years, you gotta build a solid vehicle that can do more than just drive at 88 miles an hour. You gotta be able to break through time or something like that. Right. It's gotta have something there.
Okay.
All right. So, all that said, atomic scientists don't know jack. They don't know shit.
Okay.
At least that's what I want the readers to believe at the end of this story.
Gotcha.
The Doomsday Clock, as I said, is just a silly piece of plastic on a wall. It's all speculative. And from the perspective of our protagonist and what he experiences, everything that we've been told about the clock and everything is just a big load of bullshit, because that isn't even the issue here.
Okay.
The issue is the fact that there is actually a clock. All right. And what I have here is the use of the Doomsday Clock that we were talking about is a way to subconsciously dissuade Earth's corrupt warmongers to back off before they blow up the world or whatever. Hold up, you don't want to carpet bomb your former employer, Mr. Kada. The clock, remember?
Right.
Doomsday Clock. This could be it. You don't want to be the one. And I think at the end of the day, that's always been the deal with nuclear war. I swear the switch has been close to being hit so many times, and someone's been like, "You do not want to be that guy,
right?
Let's hang out for a while. You don't want to be that guy." But what they aren't actually telling you is that the Doomsday Clock is real. There's an actual clock, or at least a device that looks alien in origin, but similar to a clock. Like there's like a dial on it, but it's like it's not something that like you can figure out. It means something, but you're not sure what these dials mean, so to speak. This clock is located in Manhattan, New York. All right, ironically enough, same Manhattan Project and all that. That's kind of where I figured all this to be coming from. Just ironic. It first appeared in 1946, and I mean it just appeared. Okay. When it appeared, it shut down 5 square city blocks. All right, so in 1946, I mean, that isn't really that big of a deal. I mean, no power, that sucks.
Right.
But in 1946, they're not stopping the stock market or anything like that.
Yeah.
All right, so anyway, it happens in the rich part of Manhattan too, so they don't even have to worry about all that business shit, the business district. But anyway, when it does this, like the smell starts to like rise up from like the sewer line or the subway line, and it smells like dead bodies. But they can't find them. And because it's so hot, because it's the summertime in this, New York City, 1946 summer, it's really hot. The heat rises. So I mean, this stench is really like, apparent. You can't get away from it. It's really thick. So they call in this forensic scientist to come in and try to figure out, what it could be. Is it bodies? Could it be something else? He's not sure. And his name is James Cavern. Okay. I just wanted to go generic with the name of the protagonist in the story. And he by himself goes down into the subway, can't find anything, but stumbles into these old tunnels beneath the subway that in the 19th century they used to use to herd cattle to slaughterhouses. But they didn't want to hurt them they didn't want to run them through the streets, so they had to find another place to do it. So they constructed these tunnels, and these tunnels underneath New York are like hundreds of years old. They've been there like forever. Yeah. Okay, so like, and underneath there are like just like still like decomposing like cows and flesh, and it's like it's almost sort of like time maybe sort of stood still, and it's just still real gross down there. They're bones and everything, but for some reason it's still kind of fleshy. Almost like very kind of sort of like alien in nature, it's very out of place. And that's basically what I want the device to do when it first appears, is bring kind of like where it's coming from with it in a way. So he goes down there and he finds it, and what this apparent clock, and is like it's like almost a tomb, like the Egyptian tombs that are stood up straight. What do they call
sarcophagus?
A sarcophagus. Yeah, exactly. It's almost kind of like that. Split right down the middle that you can open like windows, like open up like windows, like shutter doors.
And it leaves a very large opening.
Yes, it leaves a large opening.
Okay.
And inside of the portal is another Earth. Okay, so when James first opens this portal and looks into it, he sees a charred New York City, or a charred city. Looks like New York.
Might be New York,
right? And so, from what he assumes is that this is the future. Okay, because he's brainy,
right?
And I might have him when he gets the call reading some sort of science fiction on his day off or something that.
You just have something like laying on the desk.
Right, exactly. Let you know that this dude is a nerd, and he would assume that, it's the future.
Right.
So he goes back to his quote-unquote friend with the police department, and this guy's name is Dr. Newt Grug. Okay, sounds...
It's such an ugly name.
Right, exactly. So he takes him down there, and he's like, what do I do? You know, this is huge. This is not, like, from here. This is definitely, you know, maybe extraterrestrial, who knows? But what do you think I should do? And his buddy's like, well, what, you know, show me. Yeah. And so James opens it up, and then Grug looks in and realizes, you know, when James opens it up, it's a different window. Okay. He's seeing something completely different. Wait, no. When he opens it, he is seeing the charred Earth, and he is seeing what he saw earlier. But when Grug looks into it and kind of looks at the device as a whole, he gives James a little nudge and knocks him through the portal. Okay, into this charred Earth. Grug shuts the doors. He's now going to be a millionaire because he has found some unearthly device. Right. Whether or not it becomes public or not, it doesn't matter. He is going to get paid. Right on. Okay? Meanwhile, James has been knocked into the portal and needs to get back home. Well, when he tries to use the device, which exists in every single dimension known in all of Earth's dimensions, all possible Earths, there's one device in every Earth. There's no multiple devices. Someone has not built a prototype. None of that bullshit.
Are they always found in the area that would be New York? No. No. And later on, when our protagonist finally does end up getting back to our Earth, when he goes through the portal, he ends up in a skyscraper loft, safe, where the device has been preserved. More or less. So anyway, so now James is screwed. He's been knocked into this. He's been knocked into this portal, and now he's got to figure out not only a way to back, but with what he's experiencing in these portals, he's got to try to figure out what all this means. At the same time, which has got to be a hard thing to do. Right. And so what I want to do is basically with this portal and with James Cavern's adventures, constantly jumping, going in and out of these doorways in this device, I want him to encounter bits and pieces of either information or events of each dimension that unlock why certain events occurred on our Earth, such as the Cold War, Vietnam, 9/11, Katrina, the Challenger mission, things just like that. All these catastrophic events that have happened in not only America's history, but also the world's history. Right on. He finds out that in each of these Earths he goes to, he watches something that makes sense to why all this other stuff happened. And it's almost like our Earth is mirroring all these other dimensions. Okay? But all these other dimensions are not in the real time as we are. Okay. They're all in different points of time, and they're all in different points of technology and intelligence and everything. Right. So there's a dumb Earth. There's a super futuristic Earth. There's the high intelligent Earth, which is the Earth of Earths, which is pretty much going to be in the first arc, the main hub of the story, where James finds out where the device came from, who created it. Yeah. The creator finds out that he's got a human now jumping around, and he can't have that because he's super selfish, and he's been using Earth this whole time as his sandbox to do whatever he wants to do. Okay. Through the perspective of whoever opens the device in all the Earths, they always assume that what they're looking at is the future for some reason. However, James, of course, does that initially, but he's the first to discover that the true meaning of the portal is for this race of beings from an alternate dimension to just basically study the other dimensions. It was only for it's like their submarine.
Yeah, exactly. They just want to discover.
It's a device they use to discover the other dimensions and the other realities and possibilities and potentials and all that.
But the guy who created this, one of our antagonists, he's the main antagonist in the first arc at least, because we have the 90-year-old forensics doctor that knocked James into the portal that he has to deal with later on once he gets back to Earth. But while he is still jumping and he arrives to this Earth of Earths, the creator of the device, he learns, the creator of the device they wanted to study and discover, but then he realizes that the creator is just driven mad with power. And he's been using Earth as a sandbox. And he has done really bad things in our dimension that he has no idea, how much it affects the people that live there. No telling what he's done elsewhere, but for us, ourselves, he has affected our planet a great deal, and the things that he's done alone that we didn't think were him, that you would discover, because this guy has the ability. They're very advanced, these beings, and he has technology that can alter his appearance. So he first got here, centuries ago, and decided to call himself Alexander.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So then, about a few hundred years later, we have a guy rolling around named Genghis Khan. And what he has done is he was Alexander. He was Genghis Khan. He was Adolf Hitler. He was all these individuals in history that people considered monsters. Okay. That some people considered great.
Right.
Like Abraham Lincoln, for example.
Okay.
And so anyway. Once James discovers this and basically calls him out on it, in a rage, the creator of the device kicks him back through it. And when he kicks him back through it, it's the right kick because it sends him right back. It sends him to 2016. Okay. So
his world,
but he doesn't know it's his world. He thinks he's still screwed trying to get back to 1946, and then he has to realize in the next arc, oh shit, I'm in 2016.
Yeah, he's got to make a personal discovery.
Right, he's
got to
see
something that's from his life.
Right.
But from when prior to when he was kicked through the clock the first time.
Exactly. I think it would be really cool if someone from the PD gathered up all of his belongings in his office, and it's been in a safe for 90 years. And at the end of one of the issues, they let him access the safe, and he gets to rummage through all the stuff he hadn't seen. And for him, just a couple of years.
Right.
But for them, it's been 70 years, and he's like, what happened to all this stuff? It's all worn and everything. And that's when he really realizes, I'm a man out of time.
Right.
And the only...
But he is a man of some wild experiences.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And it's all those things that happened while he was clock hopping.
Yes. But one in particular happened while he was clock hopping. Okay. The one thing that he could not put his thumb on to compare it to other events that happened on Earth. And the only thing he can figure is that it's going to happen.
Okay.
It's still yet to happen. And he wants to go back in the portal and stop it from happening. And so right when you get out, he wants to get back in.
Okay.
And so that's the whole story. It's like, where do I belong to? And I mean, that's about as far as I have right now going. But, I like the alternate history. I've always wanted to do something with the what ifs type of scenario, conspiracies and all that kind of shit.
Right.
It's always kind of fascinated me. But, I've just never really applied myself into developing a story that is, smart enough to complement all of the alternate history stuff that's been so awesome, that's been, produced in the past, forever.
Sure, and as a genre, the people that are really into alternate histories, they look for historical accuracy and look for where you're going to turn left when history turned right and that kind of thing. One thing is I picture the Good Doctor as, when we see him, as having all these souvenirs, if you will, of his journeys on his person.
Right.
What
when we
he
first
wears,
see him in the dimensions.
The technology he might have, the weapons he might have.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
All that kind of stuff. When I see the guy, I want to think, oh, he's been places.
Yeah, right.
That's like the first thing is I want that. I want to see that. And then also, too, is the Doomsday Clock as the motif, this idea of Armageddon or something really terrible happening, and these
terrible things that happen in our world and how they've been influenced through people or events in other dimensions. I feel like, the clock should be tied into pivotal events, because that is what alternate history is about, is changing the results of a pivotal event in our history and exploring, well, what would happen if the South had won the Civil War? What would happen if we had won Vietnam?
Well, Winston Churchill wrote that. Winston Churchill wrote a document that said, what if the South lost the Civil War, as if the South never lost the Civil War.
Yeah.
That was coming from, Winston Churchill.
What did he write that for? I've never heard that story.
When Winston Churchill, I think, so he was prime minister during World War One, right?
Was it? No, he was in the Navy. He was in the government during World War One. He was prime minister in World War Two.
Okay. It was right after World War II where he moved to the States and he started traveling around the country, almost sort of beatniky in a way.
Okay.
And he just writing about the United States and his experiences here and what fascinates him about it. And one thing that fascinated the hell out of Winston Churchill was the American Civil War.
Oh, I imagine that it is.
Yeah,
it's fascinating to a lot of Americans as well.
I would figure that his time spent in the South, and talking with people about the Civil War and whatnot, I figure that kind of gave him the idea to say, man, maybe he was of the thought, man, it's a shame that the South didn't win, and then he's thinking, well, in a way, the South won anyway. Let's talk about it from the perspective of them winning, and what if they lost? So, right. I just found it incredibly, that type of stuff really interesting, and I felt like, well, why not try and tell some sort of a story like that? And I don't know, for me, man, it's like reading alternate history and explanations for really bad shit that happened in the world. Puts my mind at ease to think back when I think after reading some sort of alternate history and that subject comes back up, and I think in my head, well, it was the aliens that did it. But knowing it wasn't, but just thinking, oh man, like 9/11, well, Superman was detained that day. So
well, what if it is that the energy that these clocks use to transport people dimensionally can actually trigger events? What if it is this idea in physics that you change the results by observing.
Right.
I'm going to look at this molecule and it moves because I looked at it.
Right.
Right? Like that kind of freaky theoretical physics stuff.
Right.
What if everything happens because people use the portals? And initially they just think, oh, well, we keep showing up at these really critical moments. Isn't this amazing?
Right.
Not knowing that it is the introduction of them, the foreign object that doesn't belong, is actually the catalyst.
Right. Exactly. It's it's the scissors that snap the string, basically.
Right. That would be one way that you could potentially.
That's dope. Yeah, absolutely.
Look at it.
Absolutely, having that energy effect, and I mean, I would think it would be negative energy, that could be either transmitted, instinctively or even scientifically, whereas, enough anger was built up to where it formed a massive hurricane in the sky, I mean, that's like Bible shit, I guess. But at the same time, it's reading that stuff in the Bible as a kid was always just so fascinating, But anyway, I'm definitely not going on a religious tilt with this story whatsoever. But I've like I said, I've always found alternate history super fascinating, and hopefully, as I develop the story further, I can figure out some clever ways to give people justifiable reasons why. We had a Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah, well, the plausibility of it.
Sure,
exactly. That's the thing. And, we know why it happened here, but, we're going to have other versions of events,
yes,
and other, and you'll have to explore history a little bit for things that could have been, almost were,
right.
Yes, that sort of thing.
Yep.
And that's pretty exciting, man.
Yeah, I mean, and like I was saying to you earlier, I think this is definitely a labor of love deal. This isn't something that I'm going to be able to bang out a solid treatment and plot the first 12, 14 issues. I'm not going to be able to do that in a week. This is not one of those stories.
Oh God, no.
I'm going to have to spend a little bit of time every day doing a little bit of research, watching some YouTube videos, just learning more about history and what actually happened, and finding a way to spin it to where, well, it happened, but that's not how it happened. This is what actually happened,
right?
On another dimension. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm also, not to jump away from the pitch, but I also am looking forward to this, like, what's this Misfits story thing you were telling me about earlier? About like writing a fictional tale about Misfits songs.
Yeah, there's an anthology out there. It's Weird Books is putting it out, I believe. It's their second book. The first book they put out was an anthology of stories based on songs and the performer known as Gigi Allen.
Okay, yes.
Okay,
yes.
I did not participate in that anthology because I'm not a Gigi Allen fan.
Yeah.
He did nothing for me.
Kurt Cobain is the only one that I ever read saying Gigi.
Yeah.
Like Kurt Cobain was obsessed with Gigi Allen.
And I understand why people are. Personally, I always found him gross.
Yeah, he's just shock rock, man.
Yeah, and he's like pooping on stage and throwing his poop at people. It's like, I'm not paying money to get shit thrown at me.
And get sick.
Yeah. But, whatever, people want to watch a guy piss on stage.
It's punk rock, man.
Yeah, and I had my hardcore years, but I listened to different stuff, including the Misfits. So their second book is a anthology of stories based on Misfit songs, and they actually haven't had a lot of submissions, so I'm hoping to actually get started on that this weekend.
What are you going to do?
I don't know.
What song are you gonna pick?
I haven't nailed it down yet. They listed about 8 or 9 on their website.
That you have to do.
They're like, well, here are songs that nobody's touched.
Okay.
And here are like 2 songs that we don't want to see anything on. Because,
probably Last Caress would be one of them.
Die My Darling, nothing on the AD album.
Right.
Is it Babylon AD? I forget. Anyway.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to putting something together for that. I think it'd be cool.
Yeah, and, I hope, if that's, I don't think Hybrid Moments might be off of that album.
I'll send you the link to it.
Okay.
You should get in on that.
I mean, Bullet, it's about the Kennedy assassination in a really lewd way. I've always been very enamored with that song, as controversial as it was. But yeah, Misfits, man. As far as punk goes, that's they're up there. Them, Cockspar, for me, they're like go-to definitive punk bands. For me, with the Misfits, once I first heard the Misfits, they were pretty much the first original, that late 70s, early 80s punk that I heard, and everything I heard after that, I just felt like it sounded like the Misfits.
Right.
Except for Black Flag.
Yeah, well, that was that whole California American hardcore sound. The Misfits, I'm not a music journalist or a music historian, but the one thing is when I was in my teens and I was buying hardcore albums and punk rock albums and stuff like that, is you had the English stuff, which had melody.
Yes.
And was often sing along kind of thing.
Oi.
Oi and all that. Long history there. And then you had American hardcore, which could get very anthemic, but tended to be a lot rougher around the edges and a lot less melody driven, more rhythm driven.
Because the melody was driving the disco.
Yeah.
It was driving the pop. And I think punk was And
the English experience with that is different than the American experience.
Exactly.
So when I would listen to the Misfits, he was writing songs, and I'm sure there's people who would reach through their computer and strangle me right now for not being 100% accurate, but they sound different to me, even though they were a California band too, because they seem to be emulating more of the English style stuff, or just songwriting in general. So, Yeah, I'm gonna look at the songs that are listed and revisit them and see if inspiration strikes. I think it would be cool.
Yeah, I revisit my Misfits catalog at least once every year. It's not a big catalog. It's not a large catalog. You can run through every Misfits song that they have recorded live, like for sale and in studio, probably 2.5 hours. Maybe.
Yeah,
you know, they only have like 54 songs, something like that. You know, so
right. And there's not the longest songs.
No, they're all like 2 minutes and 15 seconds.
Right.
And they're all about like old like monster movies and sci-fi flicks from like the 50s, 40s and 50s.
Right.
And that's something else that I always found so cool about the Misfits when I was younger was that, you know, Glenn Danzig was writing songs about the movies and the comic books he loved growing up as a kid.
Yeah.
Which is just badass, you know? And that's because that's what I wanted to do when I was in bands growing up. That's all I wanted to write about. Write something meaningful. No, I'm going to write about the Dark Phoenix saga in my own way.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And so, but when you told me about that anthology, that's pretty much the first one out of all of them you've mentioned to me that I'm like... I probably could lend something to this some way. Just because
then I need to get you that
so
info
much.
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do that. But I mean, outside of that, Tom, I've dedicated this podcast to my pitch. Before we head out here, I mean, what do you think? What do you think, man?
What? Oh, what do I think of your pitch?
What do you think?
I would read it. I would read it because I am a fan of things like Stargate and Sliders and alternate universes and alternate dimensions and the big what ifs. I loved Marvel's What If series and Elseworlds, and I like seeing a twist on reality, you know,
for sure.
And also, you know, the one thing that I think the Doctor also needs is something that's very personal to him. That's a really big reason to get back.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's a wife or a daughter or a dog or I don't know, you know.
Right.
There's something super personal that's business that we're desperate to see him get back to, you know. You know, and also too is I know last year Chrononauts came out.
Yes.
And it was a love-hate thing for you.
Yes.
And I feel like a little bit of your Chrononauts love is coming out.
Absolutely,
this idea,
yeah.
You know?
For sure, man. I mean, I did. At the end of the, you know, I love that story. I was just very disappointed in the presentation near the end.
Hey,
you know?
It got rushed, man. Yeah. It just sort of like, let's get out of this story now.
Yeah.
You know, and
I hope they come back.
It's a little bit of a
man.
shame.
Yeah.
I recently picked up Millar's Wanted. I hadn't had a copy of it at the house for a long time. That's like the big
FU at the end of it, right?
Yeah, that's where in issue 6 you basically want to find Mark Millar and punch
his face.
Yeah, you know, you're like, this was a really cool story, and then you got really weird with it at the end, you know, and I don't understand, bro, why you're flipping me off. I just spent like $20 on your books, you know, and he's calling me an idiot for doing that.
Right.
You know, it's a really weird ending, but I like that world, this world where the villains won and they had just killed all the superheroes and had made everyone forget that they ever existed.
Right, yeah.
Except for in comic books.
Sure.
You know, and it's a really dark idea that came out of Millar's youth. His brother had asked where Superman was, and he told his brother, you know, or his brother told him, "Oh, Superman was murdered." Yeah, you know, the villains killed him, and that's why there's no Superman. Yeah, and it like messed.
That's like saying there's no Santa Claus.
I know, messed him up forever.
Wow.
So that's him kind of working that stuff out. So, Millar is a guy whose work has frustrated me at times. And at other times seems quite brilliant. The ego thing is really hard for me to navigate. I've never really been one to celebrate someone else's ego.
Yeah.
You know, Millar world and all that.
Right. Yeah.
But one other thing I wanted to mention, you know, we're coming close to the 45-minute mark, and something that I wanted to get out there is, you know, so we went and saw Star Wars when it came out in December, and I had sat in for an episode and a half of the commentary on some of the on New Hope and Empire Strikes Back,
right.
and you had Nick over here.
We ran through the crap.
Nick got me really intrigued with the Clone Wars.
Oh, right.
And
yes.
he had relayed some really dark, interesting storylines from the Clone Wars on us. And I pretty much went home and started spooling it up. There's 6 seasons. The 6th season is only 13 episodes long.
Yes.
The rest of them go into the 20s.
Right, and the 6th season, I think, was, if I'm not mistaken, exclusive to Netflix or whatever was streaming it at the time.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so, and it ends with a 3-parter of Yoda going on a vision quest to learn how to be immortal and basically be conscious after he dies when he joins the Force. It's crazy.
Whoa.
Yeah, and he goes to the Sith ancient home planet, and Dooku and Sidious fucking ambush him and try to break his will, and like it's crazy, you know. And the thing is that I recommend the Clone Wars to anyone who wants more Star Wars story. It takes place obviously during the Clone Wars, and I'm guessing between episodes 2 and episodes 3 is where the bulk of this story is taking place. It's the Clone Wars is roughly 3 years of galactic history, and there are many fine, memorable characters that come out of that show. Ventress,
Savage Opress.
Yeah, Savage Opress.
Oh my gosh.
Rex and Cody,
Ashoka.
the clone troopers.
Ashoka, man.
Ashoka, who in the end of season 5 leaves the Order. So I don't know when she came back to the Order, but she didn't do it in season 6.
We'll find out on Rebels. Probably,
yeah.
Because she's on that show.
Right, and she was in episode 3, was she not?
She is, but apparently, well, obviously she's on Rebels, but episode 3, yes, once Order 66 was passed, she survived.
Did she really?
Yes. I'm actually getting ready to play a tabletop RPG Sunday, starting on 1. Okay.
Oh well, lay that on me. What do you?
Okay, so one of my buddies has created this scenario. This is for Star Wars: Edge of Empire.
Okay.
It's a tabletop that they have. It's like Dungeons and Dragons for Star Wars, more or less. And the whole story is set right after episode 3. And it is, what if Mace Windu killed Darth Sidious? And Anakin didn't kill him. Anakin showed up last minute right after Mace had already hacked up Sidious.
Oh.
Okay? Yoda was killed. Cody killed Obi-Wan in Order 66. All the Jedi, for the most part, have been eradicated.
Okay.
Mace Windu is now head of the Jedi Order, and of course you have some people saying, all right, yes, he should be head, and then you have Anakin who's like, I just saw you brutally murder a senator. You know, like, why did you do that? I didn't think he was all that bad of a guy, you know, so Anakin is still dealing with riding the line. He isn't fully, you know, good or bad yet. You know, he's still riding that line. And all I know is that my character is going to meet a bunch of other characters on Coruscant, and the story's going to begin from there.
Wow, man, I'm jealous. Yeah. It sounds like you're going to have a good time, man.
Well, you know, I mean, if you get an extra day out of the week,
right,
might be able to start planning a Saturday.
Is this a campaign that you're going to be rolling?
Yeah, and I've never done this before. Like, I made my character sheet and bio and everything.
Okay.
So it was really hard not to use Graham Rockin', but that's for our story.
Yeah. I look forward to hearing some, words from the front on this. How often will you be playing?
We're planning to do this every Sunday afternoon. So every Sunday afternoon, it could range anywhere from 3 hours to, or we'll set a time. If we want to go further, it's up to us. Okay. I mean, there's, soda and pizza. For enough of that and maybe some ice cream, I'm straight for at least 4 or 5 hours. So I'm looking forward to doing that. This will be my first time delving into doing some straight up 8-side 10-side.
Allow me to twiddle my fingers. How exciting! I was a single digit lad when I first messed around with role playing games. I got Dungeons and Dragons through a mail order catalog delivered to my house, and I just
hell yeah.
I tried to figure the game out, and I would get the kids down the street to play or anyone else that was around, they'd be willing to play.
You mentioned the old castle game that you had with the tower.
Oh, Dark Tower,
Yeah.
man. Sure, yeah. I actually had 2 copies of that game. One I inherited, like the first one broke, and then I got another one. I loved that game so much. You could actually solo play it pretty easily.
Really?
Yeah, it's up to 4 players, and they each start in their own home country, and they have to travel around the board. And you go into these various dungeons, and you have to fight brigands and gather resources until you get 3 keys, and then you can approach the Dark Tower, and you try to siege the Dark Tower and take it. And there's a dragon in there.
Of course.
You gotta fight the dragon, right? So you gotta go around the board to get all your keys, to get all that stuff. And you can solo play it because the computer doesn't know who's touching it,
Right.
And I was, the kid of a single working mom, and so I had neighborhood friends and all that. It wasn't like I didn't have friends or
Right, sure,
whatever.
sure.
But hey, man, I play on my own all the time.
Yeah, it's like me and my Hot Wheels.
Fun. Yeah, yeah, man. I see you had to put the track away.
I put the track away, man, because for one, it was just taking up space. It was pretty much blocking a doorway. Tildy kept walking all over it. I kept getting sick of stepping over it, and plus, where it was located in my apartment, it's near Tildy's litter box, and so like the dust from the litter kind of rises. Like in her little playroom, I don't really have anything else in there, so
Okay.
I was noticing that kind of it was starting to get a little dusty, so I just went ahead and put it up.
Okay. Well, I think what I'm going to do is when we get to our next episode,
Yes.
My suggestion is we bring this to a close.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you about your new Hot Wheels obsession
Okay.
and what's going on with that, and maybe we could talk a little bit about the world of collectibles
Yeah, absolutely.
and what you are learning
Sure.
with that, because that certainly falls within the realm of geekdom.
That absolutely.
It's more, depending on your age, I guess it's the
Right.
depends how geeky it really is.
Right.
So,
exactly.
say you're borderline.
Well, yeah. I mean, I had one of my best buds come in town this previous weekend, and we're sitting there running the cars on the track and
Yeah,
everything,
right.
like at 1 a.m, just having a great time, and it's just one of those stepbrothers moments,
Yeah.
It's like, can you imagine when we had this when we were kids? And I'm like, it's even better now
Right.
because we got it when we're 34.
You want to make bunk beds?
Yeah.
Yeah, the difference is at 34 you can buy as many damn cars as you want.
Yes,
And
whenever I want to, because
Yeah.
I'm an adult.
Right.
That's why when I spend $50 a week on comic books, I'm like, shut up, life. I'm
Right.
an adult.
Yeah,
I can
work.
do this.
I work.
That's right.
I work.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's
So-
why I work, to pay for my comics.
So, folks, I'm going to leave you with that thought
Yeah.
before Matt brings this to a close, as he always does. You work for your money. You spend it the way you want. And damn the torpedoes.
Damn the torpedoes. And on that note, this has been the greatest conversation you're going to hear every single week here at Matty Loves Podcast, Volume 2. For the good doctor, Tom Lucas, the street shaman of geekdom, I am Matt D. Simone. I don't really have any nicknames, but that's okay. We're gonna be back here next week. And like Tom said, I guess I'll talk a little bit about my Hot Wheels obsession.
I think we need to learn a little bit about it.
right.
I'm sure that you have some kindred spirits out there.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So I'll look forward to letting you know about all of my cars in the garage and their names and the gimmicks that go with them. But until then, we will see you next time on Matty Loves Podcast.
Matty Loves Podcast. Matty Loves Podcast.